And joining us on the line right now, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. He's a CIA-trained former senior intelligence officer and a New York Times best-selling author. He's author of the book Operation Dark Heart. It's a story about spycraft. He joins us now. Good morning to you, Tony.
Hey, morning, Brian. Good to be on. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you. Let's start out with the conversations that are happening over whether or not Iran, can be in the world and not have nuclear weapons. John Kerry, the Secretary of State, says we're down to the last days, and there's some hard choices that need to be made. Well, here's what he had to say.
We are working very, very hard. We have some very difficult issues, but we believe we're making progress. And we're going to continue to work because of that. Thank you all.
Zarif said there's no deadline.
Thank you very much.
Is there a deadline, sir?
We have our own sense of deadline.
Our own sense of deadline. And
we have our own sense of deadline.
And apparently the president, he says, is ready to walk away if the deal's not right. Based on what we know thus far, should the United States walk away? And do you think they will?
Well, Brian, we definitely should. And there's also what's not been talked about by him because the State Department, not DOD. We do have other plans. We have other options. And they're not all about going to war. Essentially, we have to call their bluff. We have to understand that the Iranians are hurting. That's why they came to the table. The sanctions are very important. So that's what they want. And so when he talks about we have our own internal standards, that tells me that they're nowhere close to actually having an agreement. And I think they're going to kick the can down the road. What we need on our side is verification and effective constraints to stop their program. Neither of which at this time, Brian, are actually on the table in a viable way that I think Congress would have to buy off on. Remember, ultimately, Congress has to vote on this within 30 days of whatever the agreement is. And frankly, after the folks I've talked to over in the Hill, Brian, there's no chance this thing's going to pass the way it's rumored to be right now.
Just to follow, I mean, this is one of those situations where you've been in the negotiations so long, you really want to get a deal. The thing starts to have momentum. I mean, but do you think that they have the will to walk away if it's not right?
Well, that's the thing. We want the agreement. They don't. I think that's why every time we get close, you get to the point of where they're again getting ready to have essentially more sanctions taken and dropped away without any regard to being able to go in and look at things. Remember the old Reagan thing, trust but verify. We're not to that point, Brian. As a matter of fact, that's the issue, a central issue as far as I'm concerned. There's no ability to verify everything they're saying they're doing to comply.
Tony Shaffer, you talk about trust and verify, but isn't part of the verification process to have a very solid and robust espionage network set up so that we know what they're not telling us?
So, you're looking at my notes this morning, Larry.
Well, no.
Yes.
I wish it were in John Kerry and Barack Obama's notes, though, because I worry that we don't have that network set up, that we've almost sort of neglected that aspect of our relationship with Iran, as if we're just trusting them without actually having that set up. What is our? I mean, you can't give away secrets, but do we know what Iran does?
Well, I'm aware there were 10 options given to the president regarding this issue, which are outside the bounds of State Department. And one of those was exactly what you're saying, enhanced espionage, enhanced special operations. There's ways that we can prompt them, Larry, to basically show their hand, to show what they're doing. Plus, as you point out, we need to understand and penetrate their global clandestine acquisition network. That's been one of the things we know continues to function because they continue to gain materials in violation of the sanctions. And that's the other thing. We know they're violating the current sanctions. So for goodness sake, why on earth would you enter into an agreement that they can't even live up to at this point in time? So you're absolutely correct. We need to increase, threefold our ability to use special operations and espionage operations. Right now, to be honest, I understand we're relying on foreign intelligence services. One might think of, I'm not saying this for sure, but the Israelis are very much into the espionage aspect.
We're relying on foreign intelligence. Well, in the Middle East, when has that ever gone the wrong way for us? Like Nigerian yellow cake and such. Great.
Right. Well, that's the problem. I believe we got to be at the forefront, not relying on others. But again, this comes down to policy. President Obama is going over to the Pentagon today to be briefed on options regarding ISIS. I suspect he'll probably be briefed on some of the intelligence on the Iranians as well. Mm-hmm. And again, we have options on the table. There are a number of plans, and I hate to bring up old Cold War imagery, but there's, Plan R was the one for Dr. Strangelove to go in, and take out leadership. I'm not saying we should bomb Iran back to the Stone Ages. I'm saying we have military options which are viable that include special operations and espionage, which are a step below actual warfare and above what we're doing right now, which is pretty much nothing.
We just had a big 4th of July weekend, and there were sort of warnings, quiet warnings out to a lot of, and many people say that's why the crowd downtown was so low. It had to do with the rain, of course, but also the fact that many people felt like, ISIS has been acting up lately. Maybe we shouldn't go downtown and be a part of that celebration. Were the warnings that came out, were they an overreaction or just about right?
I think they're about right, Brian. I mean, I'm one of those who believe you need to live your life. I was out and about doing things. But with that said, the best thing we can do is be vigilant. And the other thing, obviously, to your point, the reason we had to be vigilant is because this thing called ISIS has taken on a life of its own and is out of control. Let me be clear on this, too. Lieutenant General Mike Flynn, you guys have probably talked to him. He's been on Fox quite a bit. He was director of DIA. He was warning a full year before we knew about ISIS existing that this group was coming up. So the longer we delay, Brian, in taking them out at their source in Iraq and Syria, the more you're going to see threats, viable threats, I think credible threats against the homeland. And again, I think in the crowd over the weekend, there were ISIS operatives here in the mall. I would bet money that
really?
They had people looking
You believe
around
that to be true?
I do. I absolutely do, because these people are not like Al-Qaeda. They've learned to adapt to social media. They've learned to adapt to do thorough reconnaissance. And frankly, because Snowden leaked all the NSA methodology we were using to track these guys, they're now flying under the radar. That's what freaked people out, guys, over the attacks 10 days ago in France, Tunisia, and Kuwait. We didn't see it coming. They didn't have the normal chatter you'd see before an attack. So that's why people are very concerned right now.
Tony Shaffer, you just said that you hate to harken back to a Cold War mindset, which is exactly what Barack Obama admonished Mitt Romney of doing when he said that Russia is one of our biggest threats right now.
Right.
The Pentagon, Barack Obama's Pentagon this last Friday said that Russia and China are major military threats to the U.S. interests. And so it makes me sort of concerned that Mitt Romney was very right about that, and we've taken the eye off the ball. Russia now claims to have a super weapon that can disable our satellites and long-range arms. Are the intelligence agencies in America still looking at Russia as the threat that they were when they were the Soviet Union, or has leadership from the Oval Office taken them off of that beat?
There's two areas that we lack credibility in right now, Larry. Nuclear proliferation or nuclear credibility. Basically, we had a nuclear deterrent system that was set up to deter the Russians from doing bad things. It's no longer credible. We've not upgraded it. We don't sustain it. The other thing, as you point out, is that the Russians have developed weapons, whole classes of weapons, that could leave us blind in a crisis. So have the Chinese, by the way. And because of this, we have not upgraded and maintained our capability to either counter those weapons or work in absence of our satellites. So what I'm telling you is that, yes, we are on the precipice of a new Cold War, and because this White House tries to negotiate everything away, like we talked about in the beginning regarding the Iranian issue, we're negotiating everything away again across the board. There's no will to do politically incorrect things like upgrade our nuclear weapons so that they're modern and ready, and upgrade our new technologies to defeat the Soviets, or I'm sure the Russians, boy, that's a slip, as they develop their new weapons as well.
It's an understandable slip, Tony. Yeah.
Well, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, always a ray of sunshine. Thanks a lot for joining us. We greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.